Okay, we are actually. Oh, wait a minute. Am I having?
No, I realized that.
I take that back.
Is it asking me to reclaim host? Want me to do that?
Yeah, I think so.
Now I'm host.
Okay, very good. Now I can through. Okay, very good.
So are we live and being recorded?
Yes, actually both. Let's
Wow.
actually doing it. You want to increase the size of your screen? I want to see okay, your audio is. Okay, yeah, we should be good. Okay, fire away.
Woohoo! Welcome all 2 people, 4 people that are here. I said welcome. I don't have an official training, like we're not going to go over forms or anything, but we're going to have a discussion about the changes. I'm going to do kind of like a trivia to see where our understanding of everything is.
Okay.
Okay? Impromptu, I guess. All right. First question. When writing an offer, if the buyer wants to ask the seller to pay for their agent's commission, what do you need to do?
You have the representation agreement signed.
Yeah, buyer representation agreement signed was number 1.
The PRBB clause, which is second page, second row.
Right, it's not PRBB. SPBB.
Thank you.
Yes, that's the form. Yeah.
We've been using all the one that, because I got an offer and he sent over the showing form that you put in the address. And then putting marks in that box.
Yeah.
Go dig through and then-
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of mistakes too. Okay, so you would need, number 1, your BRBC already needs to be signed prior to showing the house, right? Okay. Number 2, you're going to mark the SPBB box, which is seller payment to buyer's broker. And that's, like Ashley said, on the second page of the RPA, the second box, the 3G3, 3G3. Okay, so you're going to submit that. And then how do you prove that you have the BRBC? Send the last page, but do you have to submit the last page?
Oh, no.
What? If asked, yes, correct. So you don't have to unless the seller's agent asks for it, which they should. As a listing agent, you need to be asking for that as well to prove that you have the BRBC. I just had one come across my desk that the SPBB said 3% and the BRBC said 2.5%. And so when that happens, guess what? The SPBB at 3% cannot be accepted because you cannot get more than what's on the BRBC. Okay. Yeah, they redid the SPBB for the correct amount. But that seller was going to pay them the 3%. So that's why you should always put higher on your BRBC. You could have gone back, yes, in this case, the agent did not want to do that with her particular buyer. So.
Let's make this good for a thought.
Hear me better now? Okay. So to recap, if you are writing an offer and your buyer would like you to ask the seller to pay what they owe you on their behalf, you're going to mark 3G3 on the RPA, which is the form SPBB, seller payment to buyer broker. And then you're going to fill out the form SPBB, and you're going to submit that with your offer as well for the percentage or flat dollar amount, whatever you have agreed to on your BRBC, buyer representation broker compensation agreement. And now you've had that BRBC long before you're writing the offer, because you have to have that before you're showing houses, right? Okay. What I'm seeing is, oh, I need to write this offer really quick, write it in the BRBC for me too. So that's not how you're supposed to do it.
Realtors are gonna figure out a way what's comfortable for them to do,
And the easiest, just have your TC write it all up.
100%.
That's what I'm seeing.
Our rates are going up, right?
Yeah, I now charge $1,000 a file.
The usage of TVs have just went up too. Like,
Yes.
Everyone's looking for a TC right
Yep,
now. They're counting on, like, you know, they're worried. Yes, absolutely right now.
yeah.
I've had like 3, well, who did you use for a TC? Yes, yes. People are-
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to it, so yeah, they need help. Okay. Then you're gonna submit your offer filled out with that box checked and the SPBB. And then you're going to prove that you have the BRBC and those amounts match if the seller or listing agent asks you for it. Okay, I'm already automatically gonna just submit it. Escrow is gonna need that information. In fact, I talked with an escrow officer yesterday, and he was stating that if you have the SP, they're gonna look at the offer and they're gonna look at the SPBB and they're going to look at the BRBC. And if there's a discrepancy, like, let's say the SPBB is only for 2.5% and your BRBC is for 3%, they are automatically going to charge that buyer that 0.5%. So if you don't want to charge your buyer that 0.5%, you have to do a modification to your BRBC, lowering it to match that amount of the SPBB and submit that to escrow as well.
Change our agreement if that falls out. Who's escrow to say? That's an agreement between me and the buyer. Who's escrow to say I have to permanently change that? Because if that falls out, now my agreement is 2.5%.
You could put on the modification for this
Specific property.
specific property address.
You're gonna have to.
Yeah, yeah, good point.
I just accepted an FHA deal and the lender actually requested the BRBC. And I was like, that's kind of weird, because title already has it. But they asked for it from us too, so I don't know what that has to do with it. But
Because if their buyer's paying, then they're probably wanting a copy of it.
I guess they're not, but I thought that was.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense if the buyer has to pay it.
Well, it's considered part of the contract, is that why maybe?
Yes.
Yeah,
Then-
that
then
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
In there if they want.
no, it's not marked on the RPA.
If
The
that box is-
SPBB is,
But
there's no
the
box for
SPBB talks
BRBC.
About the agreement. Like our agreement, for that agreement, isn't it in there?
I don't have it memorized, I don't.
Sorry, guys, I always thought.
No, but I agree. I think
You're welcome.
it's somehow part of the contract in there. It's like when people mark the SBSA on the contract, the
Yeah.
lender has to have a copy of it. So
Yeah.
I never mark it.
Yeah,
I think it's now permanently marked, but they quit asking for it. Anything we mark.
uh-huh.
Jess,
Yeah.
does a buyer broker representation have to be with an offer saying they're offering 0? They're not paying compensation.
Say that again?
Does the buyer's representation agreement, if they send an offer, I just got an offer today and I didn't get that, but I got a SPBB asking for 2.5%
You need to ask for the last page of the BRBC,
BRBC.
yeah. To prove it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're putting $150,000 down too. That's what my seller's gonna ask me.
yeah, okay. Yep, fun negotiations.
Do we have to have it or? He probably doesn't even have it.
The BRBC,
Yeah,
I would require it, cause that's your way out if you didn't have one. You don't know anything, or you literally can't pay them if they don't have the BRBC.
Okay.
He'll probably just write one really quick, but. Okay. Any questions on that process? Okay, how long is the maximum time frame for the buyer representation agreement? 90 days, yes. And what happens if you're still working with your buyer and haven't found a house within 90 days?
Modification of terms, or do we actually have to write a new one?
Sorry.
Okay, the maximum time of a BRBC is 90 days. And then if you're working with your buyer longer than 90 days and have not found a home yet, what do you do?
All right.
You kill
Go to the bar.
them.
Anyway,
You what?
go to the bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the about everything in the contract.
Yes, you have a modification. So it's called MTBR, Modification Buyer Representation.
There's an actual form for that. They can't just use a modification of terms.
Well, that has changed as well. So it used to be on one form, could be for both of them, you marked the box. Now there's an MT-BR specific to the buyer representation agreement, and there's an MT-LA for listing agreement.
So that's how you extend it to another.
Yes, and there's a line right on there, just like with the listing agreement where it says extended to, and you can only put up to another 90 days.
And the one where, you're just showing them 3 homes is only 30 days, correct?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
And what reason would someone sign that agreement? I don't get that.
Well, I think
The
that,
smaller one?
Yes.
I think that agreement is going to be used when you're just first meeting somebody. It's gonna be very difficult if you don't even know a person and you meet them at a home to show them, and here, sign this. Are you willing to pay me 2.5% or 3%?
Right.
Like, that is like I guess Jared James was saying that, like, that's like meeting someone at a bar and asking them to marry you. Like, I love that part when he said that. Like, who's gonna do that? Who's gonna sign with you just cold on a sign call or something?
Right.
Even if financial representation wasn't, even if it was free, I wouldn't sign it.
No,
Yeah.
no. And I think a lot of us will use that with, investors. If we have investors that we've been working with for 18 years and we know their loyalty to us, are you gonna, I am not going to meet my investor and say, sign this before we go into a house. I'm gonna use the 3 showings and tell them if they wanna write it up, then we're going further. I mean,
Okay, if they've been with you forever, though, why not just have a exclusive?
I don't think I have $1 million investor, I don't see the need for that. To push them, they use all different real estate agents, and I just don't see the need.
Oh, okay.
If he wants to go, see a house.
The house one.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
SE,
so I would definitely going to use that to show my investor.
PSRA.
Yes, PSRA.
Figured.
Okay, on paragraph of the PBB,
Okay,
paragraph 3, delivery of buyer representation agreement. Buyer authorized buyer's broker and, if applicable, escrow holder, upon request, to deliver the seller or seller's broker a copy of the portion of the buyer representation agreement. Identify the compensation buyer has agreed to pay buyer's broker, such as last page of CAR Form BRBC.
okay, but did that say lender?
Yeah, it did.
I think it just said escrow holder and seller.
But that's where the BRBC becomes part of the contract, because this document's part of the contract.
But it also said if requested.
Correct. So if the lender's requesting it, then we're gonna be requesting it, because the lender's saying, hey, I need that form, so then we're gonna request it from the buyer side.
As a listing agent, I would always request it.
It's like if you mark the TDS, the lender can request a TDS. If you aren't careful.
Mhm.
I've had them do it, and call out stuff, so. Yeah, and then Sandra, you're right on this offer happens to have, they sent over, they signed it at the same exact time.
Yeah.
They sent over the, property showing the representation agreement for just my listing that they showed.
The PSRA form, that's what you're
Yes.
saying.
And
Okay.
they put the one property and they said for a month. But they signed it at the same time that they signed. I happen to know this is a Zillow lead, so
Mhm.
I don't know if Zillow still has something that they think is working.
I would probably bet that they,
I bet you these guys don't have a.
Yeah.
BRC.
Well, what's from stopping you using the first form that says you could show 3 offers?
nothing, that one
And then
works.
as you write your offer, you're just gonna go on to the second form, right?
For one house.
You don't need to do a BRVC if you have the PSRA, and they actually do buy one of those homes. You would just have to turn in the PSRA to prove it.
Oh.
The PSRA
Oh, yeah, it
has
would not
the
have the
amount.
commission. It
Yeah.
has the amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll be honest with this one, the approval letters dated August 14th, so this guy's been showing houses for a while. So if he signed the showing representation at the same time as the offer, that's what we're saying is they he probably doesn't have something that was signed prior.
Right. And, you know, how do we police that, or do we
We're
care?
not going to,
Yeah,
No,
no.
we're not policing that.
I mean, it would have to turn into the listing agent asking for it in advance before they let them show it, like a PED, and
which
then,
we may come across some listing agents. I think there will be, because that's control and they love control. There's gonna be agents that will absolutely ask for that. I believe that before they'll let you in the home. Yeah. That's gonna be water that we get into that we don't know what's gonna happen. Because do they, it's like a P.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I think we'll see a lot of agents go towards that.
that just makes more work for them, but whatever. If you're doing it correctly, you don't have anything to worry about. You can just send it in. Yeah,
By anybody.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you have it?
Right.
The joys of being a self-policing organization.
Okay,
It does make sense that escrow, if they have the BRDC, then that's 3%,
mhm,
and then the SPVB comes through at 2.5, the contract with the buyer is gonna
they're gonna owe 0.5%.
Yeah.
Mhm,
take that 0.5% to the buyer.
yeah. And so myths, I think you have to be really careful with this lender. And reminding them over and over again that the buyer is not paying that amount, the seller is. Cause we don't want them to be charged for that,
On behalf of the buyer.
yeah. Yeah. Fun. Okay, and moving on, but within the same vein, let's say you get a lead, a buyer lead, and this is someone you don't know, maybe they are a call from the office, or maybe you were part of Realtor.com or something, it's just a lead. Oh, your website, that's right. It came from your website or your social media, you've never met them before, and they call you up and they wanna go see a house, what do? What's our plan?
Come in for buyer consultation.
That would be ideal. Number one would be to get them in the door to do a buyer consult. But what if they're like, no, I don't really know if I'm serious. I just want to see this one house. How are you going to get in front of them without just being like, well, legally, I have to sign, you have to agree to pay me. What should we do? We're gonna run into it. We gotta be prepared.
We just have to explain that there's a representation agreement if we just want to see that house. They don't want to get married on our first date,
Mm-hmm.
that I can show them the one house and, but I have to have the form because I don't work for free.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
saying that.
So like Paul said, you could use the PSRA, which has just the 3 addresses. You could fill it out for that one address, meet them at the house and explain to them, this is our permission to go see this house. This is the new way that we do things. Let's go in and then try while you're in there to build a better relationship and get them in for the buyer consult, so you can move forward. Yeah.
And you can add a house onto that and go
Yeah.
up to 3 times.
Yes.
You can add a house.
Yeah.
And I heard Larry say, and get me wrong, Larry said you could do an addendum to that and add more houses on. That's what Larry said.
That makes no sense.
What? I'm just saying, I mean, he's the director of operations, he said we could add an addendum on.
Before the mix gets in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's a good note to say to them as well, that every agent should be doing, every agent that knows the new rules, that's following, staying up to date, should be doing the same thing I'm doing with you.
Yes.
Because what's gonna happen is there's gonna be one agent that don't know, because they haven't been paying attention, because I talked to one last week. And 2, they're gonna just do it the wrong way anyways, because they're just trying to, get the leads, right?
Right.
So you have to be able to say, your value is, I keep up to date on the rules, I know that this is a rule. If I don't do this, I can lose my license and nothing is worth not being able to support my family. So I'm not getting a $15,000 fine when I'm not getting paid from you.
Right.
It's not worth it.
How many more questions do you have? Because I have a really bad question, but I can wait.
Go for it.
I brought up the worst.
Okay, well, that's it. My questions are it for the buyer, but I do have questions about listings, but you wanna go ahead?
So if you're circle prospecting a neighborhood and you're talking to a neighbor, that's a real estate like move, right? Because it could be potentially a buyer or seller. So what are you supposed to do if you're sharing real estate knowledge with somebody? Are you supposed to sign a BRDC or anything like that with them? Because,
Are you talking about like door knocking?
but it could be either when you're circle prospecting in a neighborhood. Yes, exactly. I mean, that's like ridiculous.
Like-
They really, fire at that moment though?
No,
You're just prospecting. They haven't moved forward. Once they move forward and say, now I want to start seeing houses, then you have to get it in mind.
I mean, it just seems so absurd.
yeah, that's my opinion too. Cause you're gonna bring them in to have your buyer consult before you go show homes and you talk all about real estate and how it works there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think prospecting is different. Once you get out and start showing them, that's when you have to have the signed.
Question, Jessica, I think I heard also, that if you're a listing agent and you have the listing and somebody calls you off of the sign to see the property, you don't need anything signed with them because you're really working for the seller.
That's correct.
Want to get that?
Somebody else, anybody over there?
No, I'm
All right, go ahead.
Okay, if you have a listing that was written on the old form and it is still active on the MLS, do you need to do anything?
Yes.
Yes.
there's
What?
no form.
MTLA.
DM LA.
I was like,
Yes.
I'm not gonna say peanut butter, PRBS.
I know.
I used the wrong one this morning, and that's the one I gave you. So I'm like, but they're in all mine is fine.
Okay, good. So it's the DM, which is disclosure modification, listing agreement. And that's only for the old form that is still active on the MLS. And so that's a temporary form.
In a
Look
month
away.
or so, that's
Yeah.
fine. That form should be gone next week.
Yeah.
Everybody should have already-
Exactly, exactly. Okay, that one was easy. Okay, when taking a listing, where do you write in how much the seller is willing to pay the buyer agent?
There isn't, no.
Nowhere, yay. Do you still have a conversation with them about it?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, good. We're getting it, because I still have questions. Well, where do I write down what the buyer's getting? You don't. Okay.
So, but they're not.
Mhm.
But I have a question.
Yeah.
We came across this I have a question. Okay, so on the other side, when you're doing your buyers and you're writing that, remember how one of the agents wanted to write in other terms? Do you remember that one? They wrote in other terms.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot
They're writing in other terms.
on the listing agreement.
No,
No.
on the purchase agreement, they're writing in other terms what they're going to pay. Like seller to pay 2.5%.
Instead of using the SPBB.
Yes.
Okay.
So how do we feel about that?
No, you need to check the right box and put it
Right.
on the right
So
form.
what happens if they do check the box, but they're still repeating it and writing it in there?
I would delete.
In
the
other
redundancy,
terms.
In my opinion,
You what?
I would do a counter and tell the seller they should just delete the redundancy, because in my world, what if somebody comes back and says, well, you were agreed to pay this, but you also agreed to pay down here.
Yeah,
Now you're paying 5%. I mean, like, I'm just one of those that starts thinking of
Yeah.
those crazy things. That's just how my brain works.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had this happen once on a request for repairs where they wrote in the request for repairs that the seller would credit them. And this was a seller responding that they give them $10,000. And then they did an addendum saying seller to give $10,000 to buyer for closing costs. So I had $20,000 worth of credits technically per the contract that we had cleaned up. So I'm just one of those kind of.
mhm,
Crazy. I would counter it and take
Yeah.
off the other terms.
or at the very least, do an addendum as soon as you're in contract. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, and Sandra, you're right, that if you're the listing agent and someone calls or contacts you somehow and wants to see your listing, you are able to show it to them because you represent the seller. Now, if they want to buy the house and they don't have an agent, then you would have to do your own BRBC with them or the PSRA for just that property and go from there.
But what's the first question you ask them when they call?
Do you have an agent?
Because.
And they'll say,
I know
yeah,
it's
but.
Do they lie? Yeah, they
Mhm,
lie.
mhm.
You decide you like this house and I'm showing it to you, and you want to write an offer, you need to write that offer with me.
Mhm.
And as the listing agent, if, let's say your scenario happened, just like with the open house etiquette, or whatever we're calling it, you're not talking details with them, because if you go any deeper than this is the house.
Yeah,
It has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and 2,000 square feet. You're creating an agency relationship, and you don't have a contract with them, so
yeah,
you would, as the listing agent, showing you are listing to this person without any kind of written agreement, be very limited in what you should say and how you should act
true.
with that particular client.
Because then they can take that information back to their agent,
True.
because a lot of buyers do that, I mean, years.
Well, that's all the questions I have. So anybody else have questions? Yes.
So the unrepresented clients, they actually put in his presentation, it's 2.5%, is that right?
Is that what I didn't listen fully to?
So what I saw Mike
Oh,
say
I
the
said
other day was that it's 3%.
Oh, for
And
the
you
top.
can
but-
reduce it to 2% without seller, but as an unrepresented client.
Yeah, see, that I
didn't
don't
make
get,
sense
that
to
didn't
me
make any
because,
sense to me.
I mean, why are you gonna charge the seller a full fee just to do the paperwork? I mean, I'm not gonna, I
Because they're
probably,
putting liability on the broker.
they are, so my world is.
They're putting liability on the brokerage, and our broker is saying, if we're gonna,
To
if your
unrepresented.
seller is going to take an offer from an unrepresented buyer, they are gonna pay a total for an additional 3% for us taking on the
liability.
additional risk
Yeah.
of having an unrepresented.
And that's
buyer.
probably to prevent an
But
unrepresented
he
buyer.
did also call it dual agency yesterday, at his meeting. He did say that an unrepresented buyer becomes dual agency, and it is not, because the buyer's unrepresented, they're not dual.
Right,
We are single, we represent the seller at that moment.
absolutely.
Which, in Barb and I's world, we'd be like, yeah, no, you're gonna be represented by Barbara Ashley, whoever.
Mhm.
On the listing.
Well, and it
But
might
we're
be
gonna do our
that,
best to do.
it might be that that's putting 3 there or 2.5 there is trying to get the seller to not like want to go for an unrepresented buyer because it's cheaper, because they're still gonna have to pay you. Well, you might as well have an agent.
Yep. by now
So,
might as well have
right,
agents.
right. So we're gonna come across people who might not want to have an agent, but I think it'll be few and far between if the seller still has to pay.
Right, not pricing all of.
Yeah, company policy.
I mean, brokerages, in my humble opinion, have to be able to protect themselves.
Yes.
And part of every commission that we, split with the brokerage goes to offset potential liability. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's what it's all about, that's what they're in business for, because if, like we talked about before, if you have every seller saying, yeah, I'm misunrepresented buyer, I'll take your offer, and agent does the right paperwork and doesn't have 2.5 or 3% on that unrepresented buyer line, then the brokerage representing that seller has exposure to begin with, and even more exposure. And who knows what kind of lawsuits are coming down the pike, and brokerages are gonna get dragged into them, especially around unrepresented buyers. So I think it's the right thing to do from a brokerage level to say, if Mr. Seller, if you decide to do this with somebody who doesn't, unless they're a real estate attorney, buying your house, there's gonna be extra cost involved, so you might as well just, think about having them get
Right.
representation.
Yeah.
It's a good talking point with the seller.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great time. It is.
Brokers can't stay in business if they're gonna be
Right.
exposed to lawsuits from unrepresented.
Because those
Yeah.
attorneys that were in this lawsuit are already
If we
waiting for the
don't
next.
keep that high, if we don't keep that at 3% or high, it's gonna happen all day long. People are gonna think that they can just go buy a house with no representation.
Yeah.
So,
That is what buyers are thinking, they can save some money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it on Facebook groups. I would never sign anything. I'm just gonna go to the listing agent directly.
And the listing agent's gonna make you sign something, you idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. But, yeah, I saw it on ABC, like they posted some stuff in it, that's what was happening, because people were like, they were calling us some bad names.
Yeah.
Glorified car salesman.
Mm-hmm.
You guys don't even know.
do you guys see, this is controversial now, this is something a manager should bring up. No,
Okay.
This is being recorded.
It is, and live streamed.
Let's hear it, let's hear it.
Did I see, Jared James post that he came out with the attorney's name that started all this? Yeah, that was it. I love that post. I was like, wow, that's a good post.
Well,
Yeah,
and that
that's-
attorney is seeking, what, $33 million of the, so Jared James said he made $1,500 a month, an hour.
An hour.
Who's cheating people out of money? Like, who's?
Wow.
It was really good.
That was
His
like.
bill was $33 million.
$33
$33 million was his bill.
And he's teeing up for the next one, so that's why we have to follow the rules and we have to not say anything publicly because he's teeing up for his next. That's how he's gonna make
Oh,
his
and
money.
he completely
It's
said
sad.
that
sad.
he's going to be watching,
Yeah, he
now
did.
that this happened, he will be watching the real estate
You can
deal.
only get
Yeah.
by so small on 33 million people.
Yeah,
That's all it
33
is hard to
million
buy.
isn't enough. Yeah,
He's gotta get his next.
yeah. But I like how Jared, exposed him.
Yeah.
The way that we're being exposed.
Exactly. They should, I mean, people should know who started this, because this was.
Oh, I'm gonna share it right now.
Been going on for years.
Yeah, let's all share it. That's great. No, we should all share it.
Oh, boy.
For sure, we're trouble, this is the trouble.
In other news, we're on record.
Yay.
Close one and hopefully get another one in that day.
Good.
Oh, 30.
Any other questions?
$36.8 million, not 30, I was wrong, I
Oh.
stand corrected. Instagram gets more.
No, we're good.
We're good, guys.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're wrapping up.
We better.
I guess I-
I'm gonna be quiet.
All right, wow, nobody joined us. And